Thanks, Laura. Thank you, Lisa. That was a wonderful reading. Yeah, undertaking a crown of sonnets writing a crown of sonnets is quite the undertaking. So I applaud you there. You talked about kind of sparse poetry and longer forms. I'm more comfortable with the sparse poetry, so I'll be reading a lot of kind of shorter poems today. I decided to read from my two collections, Gospel Drunk and Short Histories of Light, and some newer stuff, but more so in a thematic form. So I'll be reading typical topics that I go over. I think the first one will be on mental health and alcoholism. Second will be religion, and then whatever I got from the new stuff, and if there's time. So I'll just do the same. I'll kind of set my timer here and then get going. And thank you for everyone's attention. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here goes. This first poem is titled Ignoring Presence of Mind. You are a constellation of undiscovered light. I am a protagonist, pulling myself out from the plot. We are bathtubs of humor and antidepressants, proud graduates of drowning school. Last night I woke the TV and he kept screaming at me. When cell phone chimed in, you were too scared to soothe her to sleep. Medication hushed us into comas. Comas. Friends keep laughing, only we can't see why. When I edit these rough drafts of rough days, I sand the words with your embrace. Today I'm attempting my own skin. My wrists keep knocking on the door. But I've been a good boy, trying so hard not to answer. With that poem, things like, just kind of want to mention this, cell phone chimed in, um, and what was the other, some other line. But I was really thinking of Craig Rain's poem, A Martian Sends a Postcard Home, if anybody has read that poem. It's such a wonderful poem. So the next poem on a similar kind of theme of, I guess, depression and alcoholism here. We have two short ones. This first one's titled Empty. For drink, sirs, is not disease, but desire. Such crippling company. One cannot retire on desire with disease. I do not Bible, but I bleed. What breath is left for brains? And who asked for bread? For Bibles sealed in Babel, sworn in bed. Please more. Poor me, help. Help poor another, please. Please another poor. What faith I have slurred. What faith I have left to face. What is faith to me? What's left of my face? This poem is titled Ode to Ruin. My habit put a bottle to my head and told me to drink, so I drank to serve the habit. My habit keeps me honest, keeps me sane. My habit put a hit on my sorrow, sorrow who sinks me, sorrow who swells in me a bloated gospel of confusion. My habit lifts my glass, lifts me up. A toast to my habit. I am one with my habit. Oh, habit, my darling habit, habit of my heart. And this last poem is kind of about my dad and for my dad who passed away in 2021. And it was kind of something that we saw coming. My dad had bipolar disorder, and he was in the psych ward many, many, many times. And I also struggled around the time of his death, and this poem kind of captures a few of those concepts and ideas. This is called Icarus and Daedalus as Icarus. I am a stupid man, Father. I wanted to write about you, but I didn't have the words, so I hit myself in the head with too many other men's fists to know the machinery of your final months. Father, I am a stupid man. When I am hypomanic, I want to be headless. This is not so much confession as it is a calling. In Brazil, there's a fungus that hijacks the carpenter ant's mind, then programs it to climb a leaf stem and wait for death. Is depression our parasite? When silenced by pills, still manages to set the house on fire. Father, I tell myself it's not our fault. We were fated, wearing wings soaked in kerosene, to walk into burning rooms. Now I'm going to move to reading poems that are about religion. Another of my hobby horses. This is a short one called Mike. When I turned 16, my parents said I didn't have to believe in their God anymore, but there was still someone out there greater than me. In high school, Mike was the greatest. I told my parents I worshipped Mike. I told them I prayed to Mike every day. This next poem is titled Jesus Lizard, and it's after I discovered my partner told me about the basilisk lizard, who is called the Jesus lizard because it can run on water. Jesus lizard. Attempting to catch me before I fall asleep, you query, did you know the basilisk lizard can run on water like Jesus? Flickering consciousness, I sink the conversation with silence before it sets sail in this sea of bedsheets, wondering whether Jesus would have even bothered if he knew God was to divine a lizard in his image. Suspension of science to illustrate miracle, a cold-blooded, bug-eyed sacrilege, sprinting slime-tailed over streams, rivers, and lakes, routinely defying gravity with every splashy step. This next poem is a poem I thought about. I'm usually quite quite scathing when it comes to addressing Judeo-Christianity. For this poem, I tried to soften it a bit. Struggling protagonist. In the beginning, God created sound and used it as a blunt object. He gave some animals wings, but no hope of flying. Others he banished to the ocean, too hideous for his eyes. He made science a red herring for skeptics and philosophers, so he could take the form of gadfly, sloshing through wine, buzzing into Athenian bathhouses and Roman forums. None of these things made him happy. Now God takes the form of a wild horse galloping over hills, or a flower in a field waiting to be plucked. Sometimes he's the wind whistling above water, wishing his reflection would appear. What am I doing for time? I got lots of time. Okay. I'm going to read some. Actually, no. This is a newer poem that kind of is still on the topic of religion. So I'll read this poem, and I'll read a couple others. This poem is titled "Introduction to Metaphysics." I'm working on a collection that has a lot of different poems, as I usually kind of don different hats and try on different forms. But this one, I was reading a lot of James Tate, who I love how he was able to kind of pull off this kind of comedic way and element through this kind of prosaic form, which is so like him. But it was he uses a lot of dialogue between characters, and I wanted to explore dialogue using different voices because I was reading a lot of poetry, and I was kind of stuck and tired of hearing that the kind of I, lowercase I or uppercase I, or this kind of confessional poetry is exactly what we as writers are supposed to kind of stay with. Because of like cancel culture and identity politics, I felt there was something a bit limiting to some of those things. I understand the progressive elements of, what's the word, cultural appropriation and, certain voices, but I felt like there is something about the dialectical that I think is very important in poetry, that it can hold those many selves of us. And so I just kind of decided to try to write from different things, points of view. Anyways, this one is called Introduction to Metaphysics. We were sitting on lawn chairs, fishing rods resting, lines leaning into the river's current. The sky was blue as a first place ribbon, the sun crisp as peach cobbler. I took a puff of my joint, passed it to him before shaking the silence. So what happens when we die? He let the question linger for a while in the soft cloud of smoke floating between us. Nothing, he said, inhaling slowly, making the roach glow like a firefly. Well, materially speaking, our bodies decompose and our consciousness ends, he explained, carefully handing the joint back to me so as not to get any ashes on his scarlet robe. Jesus, that's dull, I said. What's the fun in that? I don't make the rules, he shrugged, casting his eyes into the water. Can I make a confession? He asked. Of course, I replied, massaging my tone. I can't stand the smell of fish, he said. I know, I said. He looked at me astonished. How could you know? I've never told anyone this before. I took a long drag before responding. Because I wrote you into this poem, I said. And after the next line, you no longer exist. And I think I'll read two more poems. I think these are like two of the most recent poems I've written. I'll just say this. Like probably a lot of writers, there's so many writers I look up to and admire, and I love listening to them sometimes talk about craft. And somebody that I really admire in this way is Bob Hickock, the American poet, who is extraordinary, and he's very prolific. And he writes a poem like every day. And I thought there was something to the fact that like sometimes we don't allow our creative selves to kind of unleash because of our like inner critic. And so I've been trying to write more stream of consciousness, and these are kind of poems that I just kind of like let loose. And I try to use that particular way. Like I just kind of woke up really early and just started seeing where my writing went. So these are two poems and all in there. This one's called Teleology of Caring. My dog naps all afternoon while I watch wildfires burn on TV. It doesn't gnaw at him why humans are masters at loving dogs, hurting themselves, treating the atmosphere like the smoking section at a dive bar. How do we get here? In we, I mean heedless sapiens. In how, I mean incredulously. Don't say intelligence. Do say selfishness. The dahlias outside my window are not yet in bloom, and I worry about the state of dahlias. Yet I've never met a dahlia who behaved like a pruning shear, who ached for cosmetic surgery or a bottled water ice bath. If granted the opportunity, I'd trade places with a dahlia, if only to grow without stripping my dignity, my identity, down to the level of a 15th century peasant, or cog in the 21st century immolation machine. I want to believe in the teleology of caring. I need to know, if granted other opportunities, dahlias would still live for the future of other dahlias. And this is the last poem I'll read. It's titled Bend, Sway. When asked at therapy if I was in touch with my emotions, I said we haven't spoken in a while. The same could be said for my mother, my brother, my sister, my dad who was hardest to reach because he's passed away, which is the same as passing on, but very different from passing up. The problem with wherever he is he can't return my calls. He can't return. He's gone to a better place, never sat well with me. Where's better than here, now, alive? I can't imagine where or what else the universe wants us to be, besides quieter, kinder, water, besides less because there's no vacancy in the overcrowded hotel of Earth. Where could we go before the story bends and sways like tall grass in the wind, before I go disbelieving? If, say, reincarnation is on the menu, make me a large tree. I will practice silence. I will provide breath. I will consent to the chainsaw who commits murder, so long as I may become pages in a book that puts you in touch with your emotions. Thank you for your attention.